Welcome to Friday Focus, where ideas ignite in the world of business shining bright. Each episode a journey profound as we
Here, welcome to Friday Focus, the Entrepreneur's monthly webinar. I'm Pincus Schiff, CMO co-founder at Friday. Joining me today is Adam Eilenberg from Eilenberg Krause LLP. We're going to be diving into business partnerships. The light is hurting me a little bit. Adam, why don't you introduce yourself to the audience?
Yeah, hi everybody. Pincus, thank you. I'm Adam Eilenberg. I'm a lawyer in New York City, and I and my partner and our firm, we focus on business law, corporate securities law. We help small businesses and growing businesses and big companies in their transactional work and their day-to-day legal requirements. So it's really a pleasure to be here, and glad to talk with Pincus about partnership issues. And those of you who are in small businesses, growing businesses, we can give you some pointers on how to do things as efficiently and smartly as you can.
Adam has been very instrumental in helping us when we started Friday. If you know my history, we started Friday with another two co-founders, Hershey and Martin, and it was the first time that we did a partnership. And I was clueless when it came to it. Did a lot of research, used Adam, of course, and like I said, Baruch Hashem, a lot of the stuff that I didn't know before I was able to figure out. And Adam, thank you for helping me throughout that process. Let's dive in a little bit. Who should take a partner? Obviously, there's pros, there's cons. A lot of people recommend partners. They would say they would never go in business without partners. Some people say never take a partner. So I guess there's a fine medium. And number two, to take consideration, you can only do your best. When you start a business, when you start a new job, when you start a partnership, you're always at risk. And the more risks you take, the greater the reward can be. But it's obviously another step of risk, but it can be the greatest blessing or the opposite way. Some of the biggest companies that I've met, worked with, and spoke with over the last few years were all partnerships. The most successful businesses I've seen out there are partnerships. It's hard to build a business alone, and partnerships is a lot of the time a good idea. Adam, when will you start thinking about taking on a partner? When do you think someone decides they want to open a business? And the first question is, should I open on my own? Should I take a partner? What is the first step to consider?
Well, I think the things you have to look at are, what's your skill set? What do you bring to the table? And what, you can't be a jack of all trades. If you're what they call chief cook and bottle washer, it's, there's just not enough hours in the day, and you're going to be 24/7 or more likely 24/6, and that's just not a good life. And it's not good for your business. So you need to understand at the outset, what do I bring to the table? And what do I need help with? And is that something I can just pay for a la carte? I'll pay for a programmer, or I'll pay for a marketing person or a branding person, or is this somebody who's going to shoulder the burden with me and be a full-time partner? I think the other thing you have to think about, Pincus, is a little bit like a marriage, in a way. And it's and I can tell you, I don't do matrimonial law, thank God. I don't do divorce law, but I've done plenty of business divorces, and they are very painful. And so you have to really think carefully when you do take a partner. I think among other things you have to think about is really, where you are in life and where your partner is in life, and what your lifestyle is. So if one partner, needs to spend a lot of money, and whether it's going to Las Vegas or spending for his 10 kids or, whatever it is, and the other partner says, I don't want to take any money out of this business. I want to make enough to make a living, but I want to keep plowing it back into the business to grow it. It doesn't mean it's incompatible. It just means you guys got to know that up front, right? You got to know that you've got different expectations, different understandings. One partner may want to flip the company, get rich quick. The other one may say, this is my legacy. I want to build this for the next 20 years, and I want to be the biggest and the best, and I want to change the world. So it's really sort of like a courtship. It's like, hey, do we speak the same language? Do we have the same approach to life? Do we have the same approach to business? Very, very important. So once you get those basics out of the way, then you say, okay, we're going to be partners together. What do I bring to the table? What do you bring to the table? And how are we split up the ownership based on what we each bring to the table and what we're each going to do? There are different kinds of partners. There's money partners. There's operating guys. There's the back room guys. And then there's the marketing guys, the upfront guys who are generating sales or revenues. They're all critical to a business. And again, you figure out what you bring to the table and what a partner can bring to the table, and you kind of go from there.
Right. Just to put it in perspective, in my opinion, you're never protected. And every minute that you live, you're never protected, you're never safe. You can do your status, you do your best. And with Hashem's help, the risk pay off and
Sure.
you get it right. So the first thing to consider, where you take, if you should take a partner, seeing, do you want to do it on your own? That's number one. Can you do it on your own? Is it a business that you can run on your own? And the question is how hard you're willing to work. And sometimes partners, do you want 100% of a small business versus 20% of a bigger company? And money, it doesn't always mean that having a full business is less than having. As a matter of fact, most successful companies have a ton of partners and people that own more of the pie. Once you decide you want a partner, you start looking for one. The number one disaster, I could say, Adam, and I wonder your thought on this. The most fights happen between partners that do the same thing. So let's say you decide you want to open a business one day. You're afraid, you're nervous, and you need a lot of support. Some people need just in general more support. And he decides, you know what, I don't want to do it on my own. Let me do it together with someone. If we just take that person in order to feel secure, safe, and he should make you feel good about yourself. The problem is 5-10 years later, the business is successful, your ego is satisfied, you feel safe, you feel secure, and you're like, why do I share 50% of my company? And when I did all the work, and the way he's always going to see this, he did all the work, because there's no set of skills. Let's say when you're focused on operations, your partner's focused on sales and marketing, you can't say 10 years later, I did all the work. Everyone knows that it's a combination of both. But when both partners do the same thing, and they're just there just to suit each other, like to make sure everything goes right, they do the same thing. At the end of the year, 10 years later, you might find yourself thinking, why did I take in a partner? He didn't bring me any value to the company. You'll start forgetting how much security, how insecure you were. But the work, you'll get to feel like you did it all.
That's a challenge, and that's why a lot of partnerships split up, and why there are a lot of divorces. I think what you got to go into it is just to think and be realistic. Is to say, you compare the relative contributions right at the outset, and you say, okay, this was my idea. I'm putting some money into it, or I've worked 2 years to, develop this idea. And I'm bringing in a guy who's a programmer. Well, programmer is important, but, I could get some guy in India, for $1 an hour, to do that. So should that be a 50-50 partner? Probably not. And instead of talking about percentages, I like to think about relative value. So let's just say, I start a company, I take in a partner, and I'm 2/3 and he's 1/3. That means, forget about 2/3, 1/3. It means that I'm twice as valuable as he is, right? 2/3 is twice 1/3. Is that the right number? Because I'm 2/3, it's my idea, and I'm going to be working 24/6, and it's a part-time gig for him. He does other things, or he's just writing a check, and doing nothing else. That's a good way of thinking about things. Put a more extreme example. I take 90%, I give him 10%. Well, that means, mathematically means I'm 9 times more valuable than he is to the growth of the business. I'm not sure that's the right number or not. I mean, each situation is different, but I think that's a smart way of thinking about it. What are the relative partners? And it's more complicated with more than one. You bring in 4 partners. Well, one guy's 50%, the other 2 guys are 25%. Well, the 50% guy is providing twice as much value as each of those 25% guys. So that's one way to look at it. The other way to look at it, and Pincus, we've discussed this over time. We discussed this when we started your company, is whatever share you agree on with your partners. There's this whole concept of vesting, which means you got to earn it. So we decide to be 50-50 partners, and your partner says, hey, great, I'm going to the beach. Here's where you send the dividends. Here's where you send the checks. And you're going to go, wait a second, that's not the deal. You gotta work there. You gotta earn it. You gotta have metrics, milestones, or whatever. If sales double, if you get that key contract. And so very often what founders say at the beginning, and I know we did this in your case, Pincus, is you say, okay, we got 3 guys, for giving up our jobs and for walking in the door, we each own 25% of what our share is going to be. But then we got to show up to work. So if I don't show up after if I stop showing up after a year, maybe I only keep 25% of my 1/3. But if I show up to work, in effect, and that's a metaphor, it's not literally because everything's remote. But if I show up, if I do what I'm supposed to do for the next 3 years, I've earned it, right? Forget about going to the beach. Forget about, God forbid, getting hit by a bus. Forget about anything else. I've earned it. And that's the kind of discussion that I think a lawyer can have and does have with partners, and to say, look, let's go through some scenarios. Let's go through some scenarios here. What if your partner goes to the beach? That's not cool, right? We get his stock back. Do we get all the stock back? Or, you know what? He worked for a year. He gets to keep a piece of it. What if, God forbid, something happens to him? Well, that's fine, but, maybe we could buy back his stock, because as much as we like him, we don't really know his wife, and we don't really want his wife or her husband, as the partner. So those are the kind of scenarios you got to think about. You shouldn't spend a lot of time thinking about it, because, you get your lawyer involved and that costs money. But there are basic key issues you should identify. And you know what? This is not reinventing the wheel. There are a lot of template agreements and checklists that you can either find online, or a good startup lawyer can say, okay, let's go through the basics. What's the going to the beach scenario? What's the getting hit by the bus scenario? What are performance metrics for each of the partners? And those are the things that it's always better to talk about earlier rather than later. And what I like to say is, you invest a little time and money and effort in that. You'll either find out that you guys just are not suitable to each other because you have way different expectations. A partner says, hey, I'm giving up my job. I've earned my 50%. It's an opportunity cost for me. And, you may not agree with that. So maybe it's better not to get married, right away. Better to know now than later. And then you write an agreement. You write a short agreement. Doesn't have to be 100 pages. And then, God willing, you put it in a drawer. You never have to look at it again. But it's good to go through that exercise. So those are some of the considerations, Pincus, you think about when you're going into this, whether you should get a partner, what the percentage share should be, and how they earn that over time. Again, I'm talking to 30,000 feet, but that's the basic kind of things you got to be thinking about.
Right. Adam, I missed the big part of it. For some reason, my computer was scheduled maintenance, and I lost a few minutes ago. I had to wait until my computer was on. So I guess we're up to the next part, where, based on the last words I heard from you, is when to take a partner and how much equity to give.
Right.
Is that correct? Okay, perfect. My next step is, and it's a part that was extremely instrumental to me, was vested partnerships. So did you talk about it yet or not yet?
We talked a little about that, and that's really just about.
I want to dive in a little bit more in the vested partnership part.
Okay.
And it's very simple. No one knows what's going to happen with you. No one has a clue what's going to be in 12 months from now, 18 months from now. And 2 people, they open a business. What happens 12 months? 12 months later, someone decides they're done. They want to quit. They're good to go. Do they get their full partnership? How much do they stay with? And I think vested is a very fair deal in most partnerships, where you can say, let's say, and I would go back a little bit and say, how much time does this business need to take off? Some businesses need 4 months. That's, some businesses are good with a big launch and they're good to go. Some businesses need 5 years, 10 years. So first, I would say, take your business and let's divide it. How many years do you think it's important to have every single partner working fully in this company? So let's say your number is 4 years. So I would vest the partnership based on let's say we give it to you for 4 years. So let's say you own 25 or 50% of the company. Every year that you work in the company, you get 12.5%, or you can set it up even by the month. So let's say if you only worked 18 months, the only thing you get is 18% or 19%, whatever the number is. And what do you think about vested partnerships, and when is it not a good idea?
No, I think it's a very good idea, actually. I think, but I think it's probably more appropriate to vest some of it the day you walk in the door, because you're giving up other opportunities. You put some human capital, some intellectual capital into creating the company. Or a guy's coming in the door and says, on day one, I've got my network, I got my contacts for marketing, or for I have ins with the regulators if it's a regulated business, Department of Health if it's kind of a healthcare type thing. So what I see sometimes is, and more often is, so there are 3 guys coming in, they each get a third. You may say, okay, of that third, maybe one third of that third, or 25% of that third are vested just from walking in the door. So if, God forbid, you drop dead the next day, you still got it, because you got the thing started. I think that's fair. And that's a negotiation. It's a negotiation. There may be different formulas for different partners. The founder, the one guy who had the idea may say, hey, look, this is my baby. It's not fair for me to hire everybody and then go to the beach, but I'm 50% vested. And you guys, you got to prove yourself. I don't even know who you are. You were introduced to me by a friend. You sound like you know the right stuff, but you gotta earn it. You gotta perform. So I'll vest you. They call it a cliff. Nothing until the first year, and then you can do it monthly or quarterly or whatever. You can be as creative, as flexible as you want, as long as all the parties agree.
Got it. Makes a lot of sense. I think if the other way around, so let's say even if it's vested, let's say 36 months, 36%, but whenever you leave, you lose a third of it. You lose a fourth, half of it.
That's right.
So you can take in different partners. But I like the concept that you're saying. You can be as creative as you want. The reason why it's so much easier when you talk about this stuff beforehand, it's very simple. When you start a business, both partners equally agree about, let's say, vested partnership. Both wanted that if the other guy quits, the second you're already thinking about quitting, and the conversation it's a partnership that already happened, and you want to go back and divide it, then if it's not clear and you didn't think about it, then you can be in trouble. So as going back, you're never protected, and you can only do your best. The rest is up to Hashem. But when it comes to making a business partnership agreement, it's probably the number one ishtadlus. And I mean, it's the number one place where I would spend money again over a fancy logo or a fancy office, fancy desk. This is like the number one. We start with a business partnership.
Once you agree to go into business, I think it's very important to set up a legal entity. The kind of the brilliance of actually American, and originally started in England, of limited liability is really what enabled capitalism to grow, right? It's the idea of limited liability. You're not personally liable. Nobody's going to take your house. Nobody's going to take your car, from you for the debts of the company. And that really started with corporations, which are legal entities. You form a corporation. There are variations on that. There are partnerships, and there are things called, sort of in between, called LLCs, limited liability companies. And these are all creations of each state. So you could be a New York corporation or a Delaware corporation, and there are pluses and minuses to all this. Many of the considerations are tax driven, and we'll leave that to another session where an accountant can give some advice. But the idea from a business perspective is to limit your liability. So in other words, you start a small business and you got to sign a lease for your office. If God forbid the business doesn't work out, the landlord is not going to come to you personally, unless, now here's the thing, many small businesses, many people who do business with small businesses say, hey, listen, this corporation's a shell. It doesn't have any assets. I want your personal guarantee.
Personal guarantee.
So you're back where you started. But But in terms of liability, you really are free. And the idea is, you have a store and God forbid somebody slips on the sidewalk or somebody slips in the store, a can of peas falls off the shelf and hits him in the head. You're not going to be personally liable. That's not going to ruin you financially. You get insurance, but it's the corporation that's liable, not you personally. And that's really what enabled big businesses to develop in this country is
Right.
limited liability. So the first step, no matter what you do, and I really, don't do this personal sole proprietorship. I'm just running the business. It's Adam Eilenberg, DBA, so-and-so grocery. You must establish your business in a form of an entity. And that's done by, it's a very simple filing. A lawyer can do it. You go to LegalZoom and do it yourself. You get what you pay for, but you file a corporation or an LLC or a partnership.
Is it even possible to set up a partnership as a sole proprietor? I don't think it's even possible.
No, you can.
Meaning, yeah, but whatever the business sells, you can, if it's under your personal name, you can tell your partner tomorrow, I don't know you.
Yeah, well, there are general partnerships and limited partnerships. General partnerships don't need to be legally formed, with the state. They're just, the problem with the general partnership is it's unlimited liability. So you don't get that liability protection. It used to be that law firms were general partners, ships, or Goldman Sachs was a general partnership. But now most people have what's called limited partnerships. And limited partnerships are limited liability. Again, the entity is liable, and it's managed by a general partner, and it has limited partners. Limited partners are usually investors. They're passive. You may see that, for example, in real estate, a limited partnership may buy a piece of property, and it's got investors who are limited partners, and it's got a general partner who actually runs the business. That may be a little more complicated than what you need for a small business, but usually small businesses are either corporations or LLCs, which are limited liability companies, which is sort of a hybrid. For tax purposes, they're treated like partnerships. They don't pay taxes. It passes through to the individuals, which a corporation doesn't, unless it's something called a subchapter S corporation. But we're getting much too granular then, for this discussion. But startups are usually structured either as corporations or as LLCs.
Yeah, let's see. Let me ask you, why do so many startups incorporate in Delaware as a C Delaware corporation? Why is it so popular?
Delaware law is probably the most developed and the most pro management and pro company than other states. And this is like Delaware's niche product. They make money doing this. You pay every state, you pay to incorporate, you pay an annual franchise tax. But the corporate law there is really the most developed of any state. And that's why a lot of people do that. If you're doing a mom and pop business and you're going to be in Brooklyn, you're going to be in Muncie, and you're really not going to be expanding, you're not going to have national customers, it's probably not worth it, because to open a bank in New York, have a bank account in New York, you're going to need to qualify that Delaware corporation as what they call a foreign corporation in New York. You're basically paying the fee twice, right? The annual fees twice. A lot of banks won't open up a bank account for you if you're not qualified in New York. If you're in New Jersey, it's the same thing. You're in Lakewood or wherever. You could be a New Jersey corporation, a New Jersey LLC, and I've certainly had clients do that. But if you're going to be raising outside money, Pincus, and we're not going to get into too much of that on this discussion, very often investors like to see a Delaware corp. It's just better.
Protection. Got it. Very interesting. Okay, so you want to start an agreement. What is the next step? I want to have an agreement with every single possibility that I can think of right now, and make sure it gets discussed. If someone dies, if someone quits, how does it typically work? How do I know what I need to be protected from? What is industry standards? How do you start about it?
Well, I think you need to have a financial advisor or a lawyer who kind of does this stuff. It's not rocket science, but there are issues that it's like anything else. If you deal with it a lot, you know what the issues are, and the scenarios in a small business are really, I'd say, basically three categories. One is the ownership, percentage ownership. We talked about that. One is management and control, right? Who runs the company? Who makes the final decisions? Does it have to be unanimous? Do I get more votes because I'm the founder? What about big ticket items? Well, maybe day to day, I don't need your approval, but but if I'm going to sell the company, or I'm going to take on a new investor, I'm going to take on a new partner, maybe I get veto rights on that, or I get voting rights on that. So that's a whole category of issues. And Pincus, I think we probably had that when the three of you started. We talked about those management issues.
A lot of, yeah.
Who makes decisions. The third category is exits. Exits. What happens when it doesn't work out for whatever reasons? One of the partners gets.
If someone wants to sell, if they're done working, they're tired, and it's important, especially when it's not always easy to find a partner that's the same age of you and wants exactly the same thing forever in life. People evolve. People constantly change, especially if there's an age difference. Someone decides they want to retire already. The next
That's
one,
right.
I think not too many people found like an actual partner that was like copy paste. It's basically like a marriage. You have to be able to understand each other and figure it out. Let's get back to partnerships and more specifically. So obviously the best advice always you use a professional lawyer. You use someone that's good, someone who understands your industry. How do you know? Let me ask. It's a question for you. Whenever you do an agreement between people, how do you know what to put in? Meaning, there's so many scenarios. The agreement can be 100 pages long. What is something that you focus on first? What is last? What is the most important thing? If you could run down a little bit of that process of deciding what scenarios do we write into the document, which scenarios do we play out, what should we put in, what should we put in?
Okay, well, I mean, the main categories are, as I said, it's what's the ownership, and the subcategory of that is vesting. We talked about that. The next category is management and control, decision making, operations, who does what. The third category is
can I interrupt for a second? Would you put it into the agreement exactly what everyone's role is? Because I believe the only way I would ever do a partnership in my life, the way I did my partnerships, is when someone does something else than what I do, because I want to do what I do best, right? I want my partners to focus on different areas. In my company, we're divided: sales and marketing, there's operations, vision, and then the tech part of the product. But in many partnerships, would you write into the agreement exactly everyone's role, and how, and which kind of details would you go into?
It really depends. I think you can talk about broad categories, but for example, if it's a professional partnership, like a law firm, I mean, we're all practicing law. I mean, we're all doing the same thing,
Sure.
Or an accounting firm, or, you guys are going to be consultants for, God knows what. If it's a supermarket, all right, so I'm going to be the ordering and you're going to be on the floor, and you're going to be doing the marketing,
Sure.
the front. It's really a case by case thing, because I think you have to, the partners have to sit down and someone like me would say, well, how detailed do you want to be, right? Are we all going to be jumping and roll up our sleeves and do whatever has to be done, or my focus is really marketing, your focus is really that? That's important. The other category I think is very, very, very important to think about is the time commitments of each of the partners, and they may not be the same. I mean, I may have a lot of other gigs, but I can add such value that's okay, but another guy is going to be the worker, and this is really his thing. Another guy's going to be the money guy,
Right. And investors always like to see in their agreement exactly, especially when they put in just the money and the other person is the working partner, what are you providing? What results do I need? Some people I believe people will put in results as well. He's a partner, an active partner, as long as he gives us XYZ every year. And the second he stops, I want to give him less equity or take away his partnership or whatever you want to put into that contract. But partners between themselves, do people put in 40? You have to work 40 hours? Do you have to work on results? I mean, there's roles, obviously, which is the bigger picture. Like, what is he in control of? And then there's, but how he's in control in the sales department or a marketing department, but how much work does he actually have to put in?
I don't know how granular you have to really get, because you could spend all your money on the lawyer going through every possibility. We don't really want to do that. There's money is at a premium, and you should be spending your money at an early stage on building your product, not on
Right.
paying lawyers. I think you got to have basic parameters. Pincus, you're going to work full time. Jaime, you're not going to work full time. We get it, but we'd like you to put in 10 hours a week, or approximately 10 hours a week, or to be available, for consultation, things like that. And I think that's as detailed as you got to get. But again, it's a case by case thing. If you're running a retail store, it's pretty important that everybody be there, right?
Correct.
So that's a little different. Do you work remote? Do you work directly? I don't think I'd examine every possibility. Yeah,
Got it. But you put in basically the basic concept is you put in exactly the role, what they're in control of, how much control they have, I guess, over the general company as well. Meaning, let's say you're sales and marketing, selling the product, and the other guy is doing the operations part of it. You're both in control of each department. Does anyone have veto rights over you in your department, or are you the full owner of your department?
That's right.
Can I override you? If it's 3 partners, can 2 override 1? And I guess the next step besides defining the roles is, I guess, besides the role, what is your authority? What is the control that you have within the partnership?
Same thing. Yeah, same thing. No, I think that's right.
Again,
I don't recommend davening too much about it, because you guys got to get to work, and it'll sort itself out. But I think you have to have general parameters. And related to that, which I think is an important point, is really exclusivity and non-compete stuff. And that's sort of related to exit, but it's sort of related to while you're working there. When you really don't want a partner doing something exactly related to this business down the street, right?
Right.
You got to commit to that. And maybe there's an exception. The money guy says, "Hey, listen, I'm just an investor. I'm just providing money. I do all sorts of things. I invest in all sorts of things."
And you can sometimes invest in 10 direct competitions. If you believe in a market, you want to control them all. Sometimes you got to do that.
Well, and if I'm the non-money guy, I say, hey, I'd rather you put the money with me, not with somebody else. I want restrictions on that. So you got to talk about that. Like a venture capital firm, or sophisticated investors will say, hey, I'm investing all over the place. You can't restrict me. But in other cases, you can.
It depends. Whoever has the leverage. That's all.
It's all about. I
think always correct. And in partnerships, when you create a partnership agreement, it's also leverage. If you have 10 years experience, your partner only has 5, you tell them, look, this is what I have. I can offer you 40%. And then you decide whatever, especially if you're ready to lose that and you're a risk taker, you say, look, I can only give away 40% now. This is what I offer. The same, I want to raise money now from investors. The max I give away is 25%. And the market is going to tell you if you're right or wrong. Sometimes you change your decision.
Here's the other thing that we talk about, lifestyle and different stages in life. You get. I mean, people will have different appetites for risk, right? So you get a guy, and say you get a guy who's a bunch of young 20 guys starting a company, and they bring in a seasoned guy who's 35, 40, but he's got 5 kids. He's got yeshiva. He's got some bar mitzvahs coming up or weddings, and he says, listen, I really need a salary. I really need $75,000 a year. I need $200,000 a year. And that's a trade-off. You say, fine, either you could be an employee, or you're not going to get the same equity you would get if you worked for $50,000 a year. And that's, I've seen those discussions all the time. I've seen those discussions fall apart, where a partner says, you know what, I really need a guaranteed salary. And the other partner says, well, fine, then partnership is not for you. You can be an employee. Here's your $200,000, but you're not getting any upside.
You're not getting the equity.
That's right.
And I think it's also important especially when 2 partners are in different stages, and someone, let's say, needs to earn more money, you can always put into the agreement, whenever you sell, whenever you start taking out profit, you recover that money. So it's not like you have to lose actually money because the other partner needs more for his lifestyle. You can always negotiate in which way you want it. whatever dollar that guy takes out today, he's going to lose from the future. And I think that would be very smart for someone.
Yeah, but there are tax issues related to that, so who's paying income on when he takes out the money, and how does it's not impossible, but it gets a little more complicated. But you can, I mean, the point to all this is that, again, without dominating too much, you can be as creative and flexible to meet the needs of the partners. And then I really recommend, whatever you do, write it down. Got to be an agreement. Doesn't have to be 100 pages, but write it down, put that in the drawer, and go make money. I mean, that's really,
Let me ask you a question, Adam.
Yeah.
Do people update agreements often? When should they upgrade the agreements?
Yeah. The best example is that sometimes contracts have a buyout formula. They say if one partner leaves, we're going to have a buyout formula, and every year we're going to establish the value of the company. Guess what? Never happens.
Most people, you would say most people never update.
Never.
I assume 2 years or 3 years, 5 years into a business, let's say the roles switch because both of you decided he was good at sales, but he's better at marketing, or this guy's a floor, but now he's a floor manager. I would say if you have a partnership and your company is growing, it's worth a lot of money, you should update your agreement, shouldn't you?
Yeah, if it needs to, if things have really changed. What's going to happen, by the way, and again, it's a bit of a side topic, but if money comes in, if serious money comes in, your agreement among the partners gets ripped to pieces, because the money guy says, I'm giving you X percent for X percent. I'm giving you X dollars for Y percent of the company. And these are the terms of my investment. And this is the relationship among the three of us, the money guy and the working partners. So they don't really, if you're going to be raising outside money, these agreements don't last that long, frankly.
And why is that? If you can explain a little bit more.
Because the money guy is kind of driving the bus at that point, and he's saying, look, here are the terms my money came in, and I'm now concerned in protecting my investment that you two guys get along. So I'm going to determine, what your vesting is. I may even change the vesting. This is really annoying, but sometimes, you've been investing all along, and a venture guy comes in. I don't know about seed money, but venture guys come in, sophisticated institutional investors. They come in and say, hey, you know what? I don't care what you've done for the past 3 years.
If you want to take our institution money, this is your agreement going forward.
Yeah.
But again, it depends if you're not desperate for money, you can tell them you're not interested. But again, it's all about leverage.
It's all, and God willing, you'll have two different guys coming in, two different sources of money coming in,
fighting
who are chasing you, want to throw money at you. Baruch Hashem. That's
then you have the leverage to see whatever you want.
Correct.
Buy and sell policies. So. What ends up happening a lot, people decide they have different interests at some point. Yep. This guy wants to retire. This guy can't work anymore. A lot of scenarios. How do you arrange a proper buy and sell agreement?
Well, that's part of the shareholders agreement. That's part of the initial agreement. Usually if a guy leaves, if the guy's not a working partner anymore, I think the remaining partner probably wants him out because he may need that equity to offer to somebody else to do that work. Right. God forbid the guy dies. Again, maybe the widow wants the money, and the company may not have the money. In the case of that, there's insurance. Usually, there's they call it cross purchase insurance, where one partner gets insurance to buy out the other partner, in the other guy's name. But even if he's alive, or he's disabled, or he goes and does something else, you want to buy him out. There are different formulas there, Pincus, in different situations. If a guy's a bad actor, right, because he's stealing from the company, well, then there's one formula to buy him out, and everything is not vested, he loses, but you say, I'm going to give you book value. Well, book value in most companies is zero, right? Because most companies now are technology, it's all intellectual property, how much are the computers worth, but the widow, his spouse created value, and they got to pay for the kids. They got to, they're entitled to that. And if you don't have insurance, well, maybe that's a buyout over time, right? Because it's going to bankrupt the company, to pay $1 million.
If someone pays so much money.
So you have different.
How does it typically work? Does the company buy out the existing partner that they want to buy out, or is it the other partner who wants to buy out?
It goes both ways. Usually the company.
The company pays. Why wouldn't he pay that? Why wouldn't it be from his pocket? Let's say you want to buy out your partner, your problem.
Because I got to take my after-tax money and my personal money to buy you out. I think I think I'd rather just have it come out of the company, but I don't want to kill the company. So I'm gonna structure the buyout so it's 20% a year for 5 years. I'm gonna give them a note, right? And I'm gonna provide that not only is it 20% a year for 5 years, but you're going to be subordinated to a bank loan because I gotta borrow money to run the business. The bank comes first. You can't. They're not gonna lend to me if I'm paying out Mrs. Schwartz. 20% a year. So that's, you can kind of set those parameters in your initial agreement. Again, I wouldn't get too granular, but you do see that, and that's really to protect the remaining partners. And the business.
In most cases, companies will buy and pay life insurance policies. So if God forbid someone dies, the other partner or the business in your case can just buy out the other partner.
Correct.
Interesting question. What percentage do you think in reality do good agreements really matter? Meaning what percentage is it less fights, less arguments in general? Or there's no numbers, there's no proven facts? Because let's put it this way.
I guess you try to ask is like, a lawyer is really necessary. But
no, of course it's necessary. The question is like this: if a company starts with $20,000, they have to prioritize, right? So, what are the risks of not doing it? That's my real question.
The risks are a big machlokas, as they call it, right? I think the agreement is a roadmap for what's going to happen when you God forbid you split up. You're going to put that agreement in the drawer. Hopefully it won't be for 5-10 years or whatever. Hopefully the company will get sold. You won't even have to deal with it. Right.
Right.
But it's a roadmap, and it may not even be relevant 5 years from now. You say, oh, we got this formula, but it doesn't really make sense. Listen, if you're both hopefully the departing partner and the remaining partners are of goodwill, good faith, and you work it out, you figure it out.
Right.
But it's good to have the roadmap, because then each side can look at it and say, okay, what's the starting point here? What are my rights? What are his rights? And you go from there. And is it followed? Sometimes not. But it's a starting point.
Got it. Interesting question. Interesting perspective. One of the things when giving away equity, I want to go back. We spoke about it earlier in the conversation. Just an interesting thought. People call me a lot of the times. They want to start a partnership. They have partners. They want to start with partners. And I always tell them, and they ask, how much equity should I really give away? And as much as it's as value or not, as much as it goes on based on how much value you add, I always ask people to look at the best case scenario and worst case scenario. And most of the times I was surprised that people weren't interested in giving the same amount of money at all. So let's say if you're ready to give away 50% partnership for the business, and then you take the guy and ask him, if the business only earns $50,000 a year, are you still ready to give away 50%? He's like, no, it's too little money. And then sometimes people say, yes, I would give it away. But when you reach the other side of the perspective, let's say the business earns $20 million a year, are you still ready to give away 50%? And then the answer is no. Especially when it comes to investors. If they put in, let's say, $100,000, and now they're earning $1 million a year, it becomes very hard. And a lot of founders or the operators are like, why am I giving away so much money? Is it a normal thing to do? Meaning, do people do that I give you X amount of equity up to a certain cap? Meaning, if you only invested $100,000, I'm giving you 50% of the company. But up to you can earn up to $1 million a year. And then more than that, you go down to 30%. Meaning, I should get rewarded as the working partner for building this company up with $100,000 to $1 million or $2 million a year in revenue and profit.
Well, the flip side of that, I'm going to take the money perspective on that. The flip side of that is, hey, I'm taking tremendous risk, right? You're putting your sweat equity in, but you're not putting money in. You're not putting cash dollars in here. And if this company is sold tomorrow, you get a windfall and I may lose money,
Sure.
So it's a negotiation. If you're hot stuff, you can negotiate that.
You can try to negotiate it. But do people actually do that? Is it common?
I don't see that so often. I mean, I really see more often is, you put in money at an early stage. It's tremendous risk capital. It's probably, the statistics, Pincus, are that most startups fail, right? So it is, So
I know, but I always had that question when they show statistics that 95% businesses fail. Are they calling every corporation a business? And if the statistics are way lower. People have one person can have 7 companies.
I'll tell you.
7 LLCs.
No, I'll tell you how the founders can make it up a bit. The founders, in addition to their original equity stake, right? So I'm selling 20% of the business for $1 million or whatever. So I only have 80%. Me and my partners only have 80%. What the investor might say is, okay, you know what? I'm going to give you, in addition to your original stake, I'm going to give you equity incentives. I'm going to give you stock options. I'm going to give you restricted stock on top of your original stake, so you can earn back up to a higher percentage based on performance. Got
it. So in general, I think that the money investor would tell the other partner, I'm investing. I want you to work hard. I want you to take this company to a place where I want to. I'll give you back a certain percentage of the company once it's done.
Well, that's in effect what that's saying. That's right. And that's how that's structured. They're usually not big numbers, but there's something. They're going to say, okay, you're starting with 25% of the company. You 3 partners each have 25%, and I'm the money guy. I have 25%. I'll give you guys the right to earn another 5% each. Over time. Yeah. If you perform, if you show up to work, whatever. Usually an investor would say, he would tie that to metrics, to milestones, not just showing up to work. If you double sales, if you double sales, you enter into a strategic partnership, you have a great merger transaction, whatever. It'd be something like that. But remember, Pincus, at the beginning of a company, there's 2 kind of currencies that you have, right? There's cash and there's equity. That's the universe. And this goes to the broader theme of, taking on partners. If you have the cash and you don't want to dilute your ownership, you think your idea is, great, whiz bang, it's going to change the world. And this guy is a programmer, and you could hire a guy in India, like I said, for $1 an hour. Well, maybe just pay him the cash.
Got it. To wrap it up, number one, what is the most common mistake you see partners making when they start a partnership? And I know you've seen it all.
I think there's a failure to have a common understanding of what your goals are and what your expectations are of contribution. That's really it. That's where the disconnect is.
So when someone creates a partnership, instead of saying, hey, I'm going to do this, this is going to be my role, this is going to be your role, the first thing is, what is your goal in the next, what do you want out of this business in general?
Totally.
Are you trying to earn a living? Are you trying to become rich? Do you want to build a heritage? Do you want to just reinvest for your entire life and just retire? And you say the biggest mistake is when people are not aligned and they want different outcomes from the same product. I get it, because every single day is a separate challenge. But when 2 people try to pull the wagon, each to their side, it's like the business is not going to reinvest the money. It's not going to go for profit. There's no strategy.
And sometimes I've seen it, it's just awful. It's 2 brothers go into business, or the brother-in-law goes into business, and there are different expectations, and it has very personal repercussions. It tears relationships apart. So it's worth, some of the stuff is touchy-feely, it's like, and none of us are great at that, but it's important to have, again, not get too touchy-feely, but to just say, where do you see this going? What's your goal in 5 years? What's your commitment to this thing? You got to know that stuff up front. If you don't know that up front, there's a real risk things could go sideways.
Got it. Very interesting. And one thing I would say is important to consider in an agreement: what if one guy doesn't perform? So you're both good at what you're good at, but the first thing I would put in a partnership: if the guy doesn't perform, I want him out of the company, at least as a worker, or maybe he loses a little bit of a stock, maybe a little bit more. But if it doesn't work out, then you basically build your own business while splitting with someone, whatever you're building. Got it.
You know, those are very difficult situations, and you know what? We're all human beings. We're not all the same. Some people are more talented than others, and it's going to happen. And I think what you have to have in your own head is, I made a deal. This guy's my 30% partner. Unless he's really screwing up, that's the deal I made. But you can provide, you know, you could say, look, if a guy's just not showing up, or if he's no good, you know, you got to buy him out. You know,
got no choice.
Yeah.
Got it. Thank you so much, Adam. Thank you everyone for joining in today, and hope it was informative. Looking always forward to get feedback and getting to Friday Focus episode 2. Thank you so much, Adam.
Okay, pleasure. Good luck to everybody. Take care. Bye now.